Hey, Chris.
Hi, Christina. How's it going?
Pretty good. How are you?
I'm doing well. It's funny after having gone through our recordings this past weekend to get everything up on YouTube, and the intros are the same. Hi, Chris. I'm like, hey, Christina, and it's like kind of like the same thing. And I was like, Meredith is next door teaching yoga, so I was going to be like loud, like Christina King, and so we'll work on an intro. But I want to talk about you, if that's
Yeah,
okay.
I'm open.
All right. Today, and I was talking to one of my coworkers about we'll call it like a journey or a course that I've been working on that I want to unleash. And like, wait, you have a podcast? I said, yeah. I said, my friend Christina King. I said, Christina and I do this podcast, and we're kind of getting our legs underneath us and trying to figure out we're going to turn it into. And I was almost not dismissive of it, but it was like, oh, we're still figuring it out as we go. And I was like, yeah, like, well, she's a psychic medium. And I was like, that does not begin to cover you as a person. And so I'm putting these labels on you, these titles, like a psychic medium, intuitive coach. And then I was like, I don't know, like, what was the spark where Christina's laying in bed and then all of a sudden, like, something happens, or you're walking down the street and you get struck by a light, or what was it? Like, at
Well,
what point did you go from Christina King, kind of like half asleep walking through the world, to holy shit, I don't know anything?
we only have an hour, don't we?
Yes.
Well, first off, I will just say I'm sorry to disappoint you. I was not electrocuted. I didn't have a near death experience etc., that would bring something like this on. Didn't happen that way. And it was truly a progression of evolvement and identity. I definitely know that I was born the way that I am, but I'm 41 years old, going on 42. And only within the last couple of years have I been comfortable enough to start to try to label myself and to be confident with that. So I'm going to take it back to when I was a teenager. Well, actually, maybe middle school teenager kind of thing. And our house was haunted. My sister had a lot of experiences. My mom had a lot of experience, and then I had a lot of experiences as well. Now, I don't know how intuitive they are. I'm pretty sure they are. But that's stories for another time, maybe. But as for me, I didn't really experience any of the profound stories that you hear of, like, the Hollywood mediums that are on TV where, you know, they're a 5-year-old and they see a ghost, or they can predict their grandma's death at 10 years old or something like that. I didn't have any of those. At least I'm not aware of them. And as a teenager, I was very interested in the ghost. My mom went to, I think I spoke about this once. My mom went to a hairdresser, and the hairdresser knew nothing about her, but they just struck it up as really good friends right away. And the hairdresser said, well, I'm having a psychic party tonight. You want to come? And my mom was like, what's that? And she was like, well, I invite someone to my house, and, she can see spirits and, tell you stuff that you didn't know and things like that. And my mom was like, okay, fine. Any excuse to have a social gathering and party. Right. So my mom went, and the psychic medium had like her own room, so everyone who wanted a reading could like pay and go to the private room while the party's happening so that they can have a reading. And my mom went to the party, didn't really expect anything. She didn't believe in that stuff, right? Even though we had the ghost thing happen for many, many years, mom was just like, oh, whatever, it's fun, it's gimmicky. So my mom walks in the room, and as soon as she walks in the room, the psychic goes, David. And mom was like, what? She's like, David's here with you right now. I just want to let you know that. And David is my uncle who died when I was 3 months old in 1979 in a motorcycle accident. It's her brother. And my mom just, she started crying. And then the reading like really went, like she couldn't believe the things that the lady was saying.
Mhm.
And it was a very profound experience for my mother. And of course, I think I was like 15 at the time, 14 or 15. She told me about this at home, and I'm just like, I want to do it. She's like, you have to be 18 or over. And I was like, and you know, some people, you know, most people, they want to smoke at 18, vote, or get a tattoo. I was like saving up my money to go to the psychic medium, right? Because I'm like, I'm going to that one because she's real. And one of the things, though, that was very interesting that she brought up was that about me, the oldest daughter, to my mom, was that she saw me on an airplane. And that became very true, actually, because I moved to Asia. And she said more details around that, but I will never forget that either. So finally, when I was 18 years old, I went to her and I had a reading. And I didn't understand everything at the time, but a lot of things she was pretty spot on about. And I was very young. So now I kind of look back at it and think, wow, you know, I could tell that the reading was very different than the readings that I have now, I guess, with some life experience. Now I'm wise enough to know that when you have a reading, it's kind of up to the guides that they're kind of in charge of the information that comes through.
And so when you
And
say guides, just putting a pin in that. So when you say guides, are you referring to your guides, the other person's guides, the team?
well, I like to think of it as my guides because even though maybe she might have been using her guides, I don't know. I've lost touch with her. I don't even know if she's still alive, but maybe she used her guides or her methods or whatever, but I know in my heart that it's still my people. Everything that's working for me above, they're like talking to her people, at least, you know, if not directly to her. Don't know her methods, but yeah. Does that answer the question?
Totally, yeah.
Okay, cool.
I think it's interesting and wanted to share that with the team.
Yeah. And I remember uh, I had another reading with her like 2 years later. And I mean, I just started to really want to be like in that world. I was pretty damn sure I had nothing of and nothing in common with this woman's abilities, but I had a big interest. I mean, this was a can of worms. I did my own makeshift ghost like tracking things. This is before cell phones and like widespread internet. It was just before the internet really just took off. I remember I went camping with I don't remember who, but we ended up at Martin Luther King's childhood home.
Oh,
And
okay.
I took a bunch of pictures like with the flash camera in there trying to conjure up some spirits because I'm like obviously this played a huge role in civil rights because this a lot of things happened at this little cabin and I was obsessed so I had to develop the film at the Walmart so I gave it to Walmart and when I got the pictures back I was like there's only 3 pictures and they're like oh the rest like had nothing on them. I'm like no I need to see those pictures. So they dug them out of the trash for me. Because I'm like, no, it's probably got evidence of like
Right.
spirits. So they put them back in. They're like, we're not charging for them. I'm like, thanks. I only paid like 13 cents for them or something. But I didn't really, I mean, I wasn't satisfied. It was just a bunch of light things, you know, and I was just amateur, right? And you didn't have access to information like you do here. This is before all the ghost whisperer and channel stations or whatever, and all the psychics on TV. I started buying up Sylvia Brown's books. This is around the same time period. This is like college, right? 18 between like 18 and 22. I bought all her books. I think that's when John Edward first like came out and became popular. I know that Sylvia Brown was on Montel, and there were some others too. And every time a psychic was on TV, I was glued and I was just like watching and just so amazed at what they can do and wishing that I could be that way too. Interesting, right? Sylvia Browne's books, I know she got a lot of heat when she was alive, and she still does, and she's kind of like dismissed as a fraud. I got so many things out of her books. I did my first past life regression for myself through her books. There was a CD in the back. Then I did my roommates, and both of my roommates were two gay guys, and so I was like, no, I got to do this. So all three of us are in the living room. I'm taking them through their past lives. I still remember their past lives because I just thought it was so cool, and that anybody could do it, right? um yeah, so that was kind of like my big awakening to this kind of area. But i I did have tarot cards at the time. I did do readings, but I was just like, yeah, I don't know. I just didn't think I was like that.
Okay.
Fast forward to my time in Korea, nothing's really happening in my late 20s. I'm experiencing a lot of life, a lot of easy life, but also a lot of hard life, like mistakes and things like that, but not too bad or anything like that. But it was a learning period, that's for sure.
And your time in Korea, just in case,
Yeah,
someone's coming into this blind, your time in Korea, you spent,
12 years.
yeah, 12 years. I mean, that's not something you want to just dismiss.
Oh, yes. Sorry. Thank you for letting me fill in the whole of the story. I arrived in Korea in 2004 as a 25-year-old. And I left in 2017 when they kicked me out, which I've already explained on this channel, for sure. But they kicked me out. How old was I? 30. It was 2017. So it's 38. I was 38. So I spent all that time in Korea. And so in my 20s, you're living a lot. Didn't really like connect with that. And then I remember I went to this Lunar New Year festival that my boss invited me to. And it was at this really posh hotel. I think it was the Lotte Hotel in Seoul. And they had a bunch of psychics, and they, like, Koreans love what they call saju, which are like fortune tellers, right? And they had the best there, like really famous ones, because it was like a really posh ceremony, and they had translators. And I was like, oh, so I really wanted a reading, but you couldn't specify who you get, because I saw like a young chick, a young man, and then an older lady. I was like, I want the old lady. But it was like first, like next name on the list is the next person.
Yes. Mhm.
Guess what? I got the old lady, right? And they do a lot of like numbers and numerology and things. And I've been getting my own psychic readings for years by phone and through my same psychic from before, like that my mom went to. And then I think I had a new one at the time that I did sometime. But I remember doing that, and I really connected with the reading. And then I think that's when the first ping of like, I can maybe do this a little bit. I don't know why. I mean, it didn't change anything, but like there was this awareness that came into me. Then maybe a couple of years later, I treated myself to a reading by Sonia Choquette. Do you know Sonia Choquette?
No.
She wrote Diary of a Psychic, and it was like a New York Times bestseller, and she's written like 20 books. And so one of her readings is very pricey, but I treated myself to one of her readings. And one of the things that she said was, the first thing she asked me, she was like, are you a healer? And I'm like, no, I'm a teacher. She was like, you're a healer. And I'm like, no, I'm a teacher. She goes, well, teaching's like healing, but there's something different about this. And so she dug a little deeper, and she goes, I feel like your weakness is that you don't get that you can see things that other people can't see. And I was like, really? And at the time, I'm like, I paid for this? What's going on? Like, I mean, it was like very flattering, because I'm like, oh, of course, yeah, I'm special. But at the same time, I'm like, I don't know if that's true or not. I mean, she was like, no, you kind of go through life in like a different kind of zone than everybody else. And you will say things that people are like, oh, and you're like, well, don't you guys know that? Don't you guys see that? And they're like, well, no. But yeah, well, that's the answer. That's the way forward, something like that. She gave that example, and I'm like, really? She was like, yeah, you have no idea. Then at the very end of it, we had like an hour-long rating and everything. At the end of it, she goes, I feel like you're going to do something very similar to what I'm doing right now on the phone. And I'm like, what? She was like, but you're not even there yet. She's like, you're not even close, but you're on the way. And I'm like, what? No, this lady's crazy. Now, other things that she said during the reading was spot on, and I totally trust her. She's a very big world-renowned psychic. But that's the first time someone told me, hey, you're going to be doing psychic readings for people. She was like a little bit different than me, but very similar. And I'm just like, oh my God, if I could do what she could do, what she does, that would be freaking amazing. That would be a dream come true. I didn't even know I have that dream. I've always like had an interest in psychic mediums, but I've never like thought I could do it myself. And then that was the real spark. That was when it was like, oh, and then all this awareness started to come in about what she had said, and then my experience in life when I was like kind of looking at like squinting and looking at things a little bit differently. I did realize that, yeah, I've got something going on. That's for sure.
So when you say something going on, and you
Yeah.
would metaphorically squint, or sometimes literally squint, what was it that was slightly different? And then how did you measure that against other people's realities?
That's a good question. How do I explain it? I think I started mentally, and I don't know if I could recall any examples, but mentally I started playing back some situations that started to stir up like memories that when I was like, oh, when I could see people differently than other people, it was like I could see the inside and the outside at the same time, and how I saw people in different beauty, and everyone was just like, what? And I could see people's gifts and their talents, and I could feel when that was a big one too. I could feel people's presences. I could feel their moods just by walking by them. I didn't know any, like, not many people do that. And I realized that a lot of my past anxiety in crowded places was because of that. It's like because I was totally open and everybody's energy is killing me. I mean, and a lot of people can do this. Yeah. You walk into a room, there's been a fight, you can feel that there was a fight, right? But mine was like all the time. I could meet somebody and within like 30 seconds really judge if I wanted to be around them. I didn't even have to talk to them. And I was at work, I was meeting new employees and out the other side of my mouth going, he'll be here for just a couple of months. They're like, and they're like, really? How can you tell? I'm like, I don't know. There's just something about him. And sure enough, like he would be gone pretty fast. It may not even like I gave him 2 months, but he was gone within like a month maybe.
Uh-huh.
And just people that I would meet and be like, oh my God, yes, you blah blah, you've got this going on. And so that was kind of the first thing that came in, not like the talking to dead people. And then all of that awareness. And I think I've always had that. And my mom's always had it too. Cause she used to do that at her company when she was working in the 90s. She'd be like, she was like the insurance person at the company.
Uh-huh.
And she would, it was a trucking firm and truckers would come at new truckers and she would tell them about the insurance and they would leave and she'd go, he won't be here long. And she was right. They would be gone. So it's like a judge of character almost. Now, I'm not saying that I've always been a great judge of character because no, you should look at my dating resume, but but for the most part, those kinds of things. I remember with students, I could easily see almost like a profile of my students that I would meet. like kids. And I remember I connected, this is something I'm writing in my book about Korea. This is when I realized that I loved teaching.
Mm.
I met this little boy, he was in kindergarten, and all the Korean teachers, even his foreign teacher, hated him. And I had science with them once a week. They hated him because he was a problem, like a behavior problem, right? But I had a science class with him, and I realized all of a sudden, because everybody got like their individual science projects that they had to like put together. And I realized that he would just put them together and be done with it. And I was like, hey, kid, because it was like a class of 12. And basically, as a teacher, you're doing 12 projects by yourself because they're like, I don't know how to do it, teacher. And you're like trying to rush for 40 minutes and get them all done. But like, he is just like genius, like with his hands. And I was like, wow, you are fantastic at science. Hey, will you be my assistant in science? Because you're really good at it. And he's like, yes. So like every time after that, he would like have the science box ready because he was the assistant. He'd be standing, be at my desk and everything. And he's like, I'm ready, teacher. I'm like, okay, thanks. And he would be like, can I pass them out? Yeah. And then instead of me having to put together 12 or 11 projects, like he would put together 6 and I would put together 6. And he's the same age as them. And after that, this kid completely changed because someone saw something good in him. Now, as evidenced by the fact that he put it together. But when I met him, I was like, he's not a threat to anybody. He's not a bad kid. And all the teachers were like, oh, this is what he did in my class. And this is what he did. But like, I saw the good in him. I don't know. There was
Mm.
something about this kid. And I'm quite confident that the kid's going to be doing big things so long as people are supportive, you know, in his early years.
So that's a great segue. And I wrote down a question that I wanted to ask you. And is there one person, or is there a moment in time where you were coaching someone, or reading someone, or someone asked you for guidance or help, where you made an impact, even though it may not have seemed like it at the time to that other person, or it did, and then you heard from them X amount of time later, where it's like, I can't believe this. Because of your guidance, blank happened. And I guess what I'm asking is there a moment where like the impact that you're having on people became so resonant where you're just like, I have to go do this. Like this has to be a part of my life.
It that did not come first. What came first was this fight within me between being quote normal, because I was doing just fine in life according to me, and all of a sudden have this like start to unfold in front of me and being like, oh, this is the way forward. So there was quite a journey. So we're skipping over a lot of parts, but to answer your question, I didn't understand, and I still don't quite understand my impact today,
Hmm.
because what I do is what I feel like I'm called to do. I try to do it the best that I can. I try to do it professionally, like with the most professionalism, with the most care to attention, and with the most intention, like the biggest intention ever, to do what I've been led to do. And it has been a leading, and it's been years of development and self-discovery that I've come to this point. When people do come up to me and say, oh, because of you, this happened, it's still a shock. And it does happen. Actually, it happens a lot. It's still a shock because I still feel very flawed as a human. And I still maybe can't believe it myself. Not because I don't want the compliment, but because there's a part of me that's like, well, this is kind of so damn natural. And I'm just doing my job. because I am in this kind of position. I take it very seriously. And so I just try to do my best at it. So when people do come up, here's the funny thing, Chris. Now, I know a lot about you, but I do have some clients that drift in, drift out, drift in, drift out, whatever. And I will hear from them and I'll remember their names. But as far as like a reading, I can't remember because I drop it. If I were to take it with me, it's not my reading. It's not their reading anymore. I'm carrying it with me. It's my reading. I do have what I call the sacred book, which is my book where I officially open and I'm ready to work. I list everybody who I have done things for in it, and it's all very organized and it's sacred. I don't do anything else with it. But when it's done, I'm probably going to rip out the first couple of pages just to know like that I've served some of these clients' names before, but I'm going to burn it because it's not mine. It's just for me. It's just a tool. So yeah, it's hard for me because they're like, "Oh, remember what you said about this?" I'm like, "No, no idea." "Oh, well, this led to this, and I can't thank you enough." I'm like, "Well, thank you. Here, write me a testimonial."
So you're answering my question, but not, I mean, in a roundabout way.
Okay.
I want an example where like you heard someone's feedback and it just like choked you up or made you cry or just like set you back.
Hmm. So you want like a big impact one where I was just like, "Holy moly."
You did this? Yeah. Right. Yeah.
I think it's with mm, my Akashic, I'll call her my Akashic buddy. I met her in the Soul's Purpose class last December. And she was in the class, and I remember seeing her when she came through, and I knew that I was going to talk to her for sure at some point. We were on the opposite sides of the room, day 1 and 2. But day 3, I just felt like being on the other side of the room. I moved my chair over there, and she came in late, and the only chair that was open was next to me. Of course, right? That's how it happens. Well, the whole time of the workshop, because remember, I can feel pretty much everybody. I'm getting better at that. The whole time I could just tell that she, by her questions and just by feeling that she just wasn't getting it. She was just like, "Why am I here?" And I know it's because now I know it's because of a friend who was also there. And her friend was like, "Oh, come on, just do this." And she's like, "I don't know why you want me to go to this. It's my first time here and everything." So she drug her there and we got paired up. No, well, no, here's what happened. We had an exercise where we had to read each other, and that was the first time that we're doing like trades. And Helen said, "Okay, do this." And she turns to me. She was like, "You look like you know what you're doing." And I'll be honest, I have no idea what I'm doing. Can we partner up? I'm like, "Absolutely. Come on over." So I walked her through the whole process and I answered a lot of questions. And she was just like, oh, for a lot of things because she just didn't get it. Right. And then all of a sudden she did. And she'd never had an Akashic reading before. So I'm like, "Oh, of course I'm doing you first." I did her, and she's just sobbing the whole time because she never had any kind of reading, not even just Akashic records. And then she was just like, and I wasn't really asking for any kind of like, um, acknowledgement that I'm right or anything. I just kept going. And at the end of it, she was like, "That changed my life." And I was like, "Well, thank you. But I feel like I'm just doing my job, but it's the other people, the masters, teachers, and loved ones, and all of your guides that you need to thank." And then she did my reading, and she was great. She was fantastic. She hit like it was her first time ever, and she just had her first reading. And so after that, it was like lunch break on Sunday, the last day. And she said she floated out of there. She went to her friend. She was like, "I get it now. Oh my God." So they left, and all lunch, she's like, "Oh, I'm so glad you brought me here," and all that. And that really started kind of her side career or calling. And I was a part of that. And I feel so amazed. I still know her, and she'll call me, and we'll touch base and everything. But I've given her a couple readings since then. And the readings were like the information I was getting, she had no idea what was happening because she's in the middle of a huge life transition and won't get into details because who knows, she might be listening one day. And every time she comes back, she was like, "Oh my God, you're so right." And I was like, "I have no idea. I know I'm your friend, but because now I have to read you, I drop it. And I'm so sorry." So even now, she's just like, "Oh my God, you were so right." And so those really hit home because I saw her from the beginning and all the way until now. And she's a big part of my life now. And I'm a big part of hers. And we'll be forever intertwined because of that kind of um, interaction and connection that we both shared.
That's beautiful. Thanks for sharing that. You've mentioned the Akashic records.
Yeah.
We've talked about the psychic aspect or the medium aspect as well. Have we? Or I don't think we've touched on medium too much yet.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
going to the schools and the school belt.
yeah. After Sonia Choquette's readings, I got two of them from her. That again was the awareness, and that really started to open things up for me as far as like just like, oh wow, I'm really going to do that. It seems so far-fetched, and that was back in 2015 and 2016 that those are readings, and here I am today doing it. I'm doing what she said I was going to do, and I thought she was crazy at the time. So fast forward, I don't think I did too much development in soul. I got kicked out, and then it wasn't until I moved to Texas briefly that I was like, you know what, I really feel called to do this, but I don't even know how to start. So I just started with tarot cards again and just started doing that. And then I joined a group in Austin, Texas. It was a tarot development group, and it was led by a psychic medium who I thought was the coolest guy ever. And we had a tarot exchange night. And I was so nervous going to it because it was kind of like my first time to like not do friends or family. Well, it's just friends really. And I showed up at this coffee shop and I got the number 8 for my coffee. And he goes, tag number 8. He's like, Infinity, I'm getting right now that you should be doing readings for the rest of your life. And I'm like, that was kind of random and unsolicited. Like, it was just like, it really was just that random. I was just like, okay. But I was going in and sweating because I felt the like need to perform, but yet I was just like, I have no idea what I'm doing. All I know is I'm going to try. And I was like, oh my gosh, how can I be so profound with information like these other people for 20 years have been for me, and I just freaked out, but I did it. And it resonated. My tarot readings resonated with other people, but they're also reading me. So it was like all in the spirit of fun. But I was like, I did it. Oh my God, I can't believe it. Then it was just a series of events. I don't even want to tell it because I feel like it's worth like, one thing led to another. And I met this person who goes, oh, I'm an empathic strategist. And she was like, I'd love a tarot reading. So over the phone, I'm nervous. I'm like, oh my God, this is someone who's kind of like intuitive. And she wants a reading from me. What the heck? And I did it. And she's like, oh, that was my first tarot. Thanks. And she was like, oh, I read Akashic Records. And I'm like, I've read about those in Sylvia Browne's books. And I tried to access them once. And she was like, oh, I know a person. Her name's Helen. Boom.
Oh.
But then by studying the Akashic Records with Helen, that's what opened my other gifts. So when I started to open Akashic Records, I started to get intruders. I started to get dead people. And that's, yeah. So I always say Akashic Record reading is your gateway drug, people.
Yes, it is. It's so funny.
I would get like the first things were people who had just died, and as soon as I became aware of them, it's like all of a sudden they're in my mind. And my neighbor actually, I hear him outside right now. My neighbor actually lost his girlfriend to the flu, not coronavirus. This is before coronavirus. She was 28 years old because she had an autoimmune disease that nobody knew about. until it was too late. She was in the hospital, and she passed away in the summer of 2019. And as soon as I knew she had passed, I was driving and I couldn't get her smiling face out of my head. I could just see her smiling and smiling in my head. This is like one of the big first moments that I knew. And I was just like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. Why do I keep thinking of her? Why? Like, oh, I can't get her out of my head, And I knew her because she's my next door neighbor's girlfriend and she lived there.
Yeah.
And finally, my other neighbor, who's also intuitive, she says, by the way, I was talking to my dead ex-husband, Tom, who also kind of intrudes, and like we've had a lot of conversations, but she goes, I was talking to Tom in a dream, and all of a sudden Haley came through and said, talk to Christina. And I was like, oh. And then all of a sudden I was like, I think she's trying to talk to me. And so I'm like, okay. And so I'm like, all right, Haley. I was driving again and I was like, all right, Haley, what do you have to say? And she said a lot of things and some things that I wouldn't know. And her boyfriend, my neighbor, is not really into that at
Mhm.
all. Like he knows like that I had an interest in tarot cards and I did him once, but he's like, kind of skeptic, but nice about it. And I'm like, so got a little awkward thing to bring up with you. I got Haley the other day got talking to me and he's like, oh, and I'm like, I do have some things that I'd like to tell you, but I mean, when would be a good time to do this? And he's like, oh, not right now. I'm like, okay, well, whenever you're ready. I've got the messages. So one day I was outside and I think he was outside, nobody else was around. He's like, curious, what did she tell you? And so I told him and he confirmed some of the things that I got. So that was the first one. Second one is my neighbor's dead ex-husband completely like Tarzan's into my meditations. And I've had like, I'm just like, I'll hang my head, I'll hear her outside and I'll hang my head. I'm like, Tom came to me again. She's like, oh, here we go. So I go over to her house. So we've had, I call them conversations with Tom. I've gone over to her house and I've channeled Tom and it was very clear and everything I said pretty much resonated. So I was like, okay, I'm on the right track with this. My friend's Chihuahua died. He came through, the Chihuahua came through with messages. And I was like, okay, that just happened in January. And then another friend committed suicide and she came through. I think I told you that story because I tapped into her because I was getting a little like, oh, maybe I can do this. And then a friend's grandmother this summer, and it's just one thing led to another. And now I'm like, yeah, that's what I do. And I mean, there's more things, but those are the ones that kind of showed me like, oh, okay, I'm onto something here.
So when you're working with someone, and it's just like, we'll call it just like a coaching session with Christina, how does it play out? Like, meaning, do you then intuit the tools or you let it flow? Is it non-sequential? It's like first we're going to go into the Akashic records. Second, we're going to have your dead relatives pop in and say hi if anyone wants to. How does it come to you? Because I would imagine it changes for everyone, right?
Oh, it's so different, right? What the things that I have with you and with my neighbors and whatever it is, it's all so different. And I at this point I am wise and in tuned enough to trust that it's all going to come through. I used to worry about it and think, oh, I need to prepare, but really all I need to do is prepare myself. And it's so damn natural. I can be dog tired and malnourished and like having the worst day ever. But as soon as I let it flow, I just open and I just get in the zone. Like an athlete that's trained where they can run forever. That's kind of the feeling that even the endorphins that I feel, just like I feel it. I'm in the zone. I can just switch vibrations like that, and work in the Akashic records, and work in the, like, see spirit guides, and I can see dead loved ones. Yeah, it just depends. And I really rely on I always open up my Akashic records, and I know my actual guides. And that Akashic records have masters, teachers, and loved ones, and then there are guides. And I'm not sure where the line is. Apparently, there's supposed to be a line, but they all kind of like just hang out together with me. I send them out to whoever I'm going to read and to assist, and I send them to their people, their guides, their spirits, and extend an invitation to work. And I am very intentional to say, this is your agenda and the client's agenda, and it's not my agenda. I'm just the channel. I'm just the channel. I'm just the channel. So and that works. It does, because I mean, it yeah. And usually if someone is coming up on a reading scheduled with me, they're like compiling questions, and a lot of times a lot of questions are answered within like the first 30 minutes or 20 minutes. And they're like, wow, well, you kind of answered all my questions. I'm like, I answered, like, it's hard for me to take credit because it's not my information. It's their information that I'm tapping into, which I think is wonderful. Look at me. I'm lighting up because I'm like, wow, that's so cool, because I can't believe I can do this all my life. That's all I wanted to do. And now I'm doing it. Here we go. Like, just wanted to be cool like them. And maybe I'm cool now, finally. But, uh, but I will tell you, we did, by the way, everybody, we did a past life regression, Chris and I together. I was kind of practicing, right? A different way, because I do have a mentor. Now, I bring that up because Chris, I've been doing them now. Now I'm actually getting paid for them. Now that's happening. So the training, boots on the ground, kind of like exploration, it's done. Like, I'm confident in it, right? But I did another friend of mine, and her mother came through to her in the field of grass through me.
Oh.
And so now that sparks a new curiosity in me. Can I be the conduit and assist others to actually experience their loved ones and get the information where I don't have to be the middleman of the delivery of it? They can experience their dead person on the other, their ancestor, their family member, their loved one on the other side. So I experimented last Thursday. I got a friend of mine, and
how did you let yourself go?
What do you mean? In that time?
Yes, in that moment, like, how did you remove attachment and allow her mother to come through?
Well, this was like my third or fourth reading with her.
Okay.
And she is a friend, but she's also a paid client.
Mhm.
And this I did not like. It was completely free because I was exploring, right? I had no idea this was going to happen. So in our other readings, in our other sessions, her mother had come through, because her mother is very recently passed within the last 2 years. And so her mother, I know exactly what her mother feels like when she comes through, and she comes through pretty dang strong when she does. And she's actually, I think it kind of jumped in my body before. So I was very familiar with her. And as soon as we went to the field of grass, I could feel her off into the distance, and I could see her. And because I know what she looks like now, I'd never met her in real life. And that's when I was like, oh, I wonder if she can see her like I can see her, or feel her. So I was like, okay, turn this way, turn this way. Well, do you feel or sense anything in that direction? Because she wasn't even prepared that was going to happen. She was doing a past life, and she was like, I do. I feel something. I kind of see something. I don't know what it is exactly. But yeah, it's different. I don't know. I don't even know what this is. I'm like, it's your mom. And she was like, and she took a moment and she goes, oh my God, it is. And she knew. And then all of a sudden, like as soon as she was aware, I think mom came into focus a little bit,
Mhm.
and she could sense exactly how far away she was from her in the past life world or the regression space that I hold. Yeah. So as far as like how that was unintentional, and but I'm holding space. So I talked to my mentor about that because last Thursday I tried to do it directly with my friend and it was a major fail. We tried to contact her grandma, and I was just, that was it. We weren't going to a past life or anything like that. That was the whole full intention. It was a
Mhm.
safe space to practice. It was the total failure. So I asked my mentor why, and she was like, because there are multiple levels of things going on with doing it with that intention. But if you hold the space for a past life regression, it's different. And I'm like, okay. She was like, you could probably do it through that format again, but you're not going to be able to just be like, hey, close your eyes, let's go meet your grandma, you know? I was like, oh, okay. So I still have to explore and learn about that.
That's interesting, very interesting. And it's like in that space, in that moment in time, that's what was meant to be delivered. And you couldn't recreate those circumstances or that situation and the readiness of your friend. Now, when her and her mother were talking or communicating or exchanging information or just vibing off of each other, then you're holding space and you're bearing witness. You're not acting as a conduit verbally or physically, right?
Yes. If I recall correctly, because I do remember that moment because it was a big, profound moment in my own practice. She didn't hear or experience any messages directly, but she felt like this overwhelming like burst of love over her, and she just started crying. And she was like, "Oh my god, I feel her, I feel her." And she just felt this intensity. And so I was like, "Do you? Is she speaking to you? Is she doing anything?" She's like, "No, no, she's not. But I just feel that she's right there, and I can feel the love." And so I kind of like nudged her mom, energetically, and I was just like, "Are you coming with us? What are you doing here?" Like, is this a party of three? I mean, how are we gonna? I don't know. I didn't expect to have the crowd.
Yeah.
And she's like, "No, I like." The feeling was like, "No, I just came to say hello because I knew she was just a little bit closer to me, and that would like help her." And to experience my feeling again. And I was like, okay. And so I was like, yeah, your mom just came through, and I delivered the message that that was what it was, and she was not coming with her, because at first I was like, well, I guess she's coming.
Right. It's like, here, let me move the laundry out of the back seat. Come on in. Right.
But there's another detail to the story. In that past life regression, I did get information that I should be teaching her Akashic records. So at the end, I was like, "You want to learn Akashic records?" And she was like, "Oh my god, are you teaching it now?" I'm like, "Yeah, I guess I am. I have been." And she was like, "Okay, yeah, I've always had an interest," because I do think she is also very intuitive. And so I did that the next weekend. And when we did it, her mom just totally came through and took over on her first trip into the Akasha. And it was amazing. And she actually saw her mother, like physical features and everything. And she just started getting information and information and information. And I'm like, "You can slow it down." She's like, "I need to slow it down." So,
Yeah.
I coached her through her first trip.
Wow, it's remarkable.
Yeah.
Wow.
But her mom came through in the Akashic record. So I guess there's two ways. I mean, I guess Akashic records, because she's a loved one, she could come through. So maybe I can do that as well. Because now I'm like kind of obsessed with the idea, is like, how can I use me as the antenna, as the battery, and make some things happen here, which I know I do. I already boost people's energy. I know that. Like, yeah, there's
Yes.
something about it. And so I'm a student of that, and I'm going to be learning and playing around with that for sure until I figure out this, because my guides told me that I could do it, but it failed. And my mentor says you can do it, but so I'm like, I just got to find a surefire way, like, just to be sure, even though it's kind of already happening in different ways. It's just maybe not in the way I want. So I'm like, oh, it continues.
I love it. I love just rapid firing your questions.
Yeah, I know. I feel like I've talked too damn much.
No,
And
no, no, no.
this is just the insecurity I have from talking pretty much too damn much my whole life. And a lot of people say you need to give yourself some credit because you can be interesting sometimes. I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
I'll give myself that.
Some of the best parts of the parts that you were just like, well, I'll skip over this. It's like,
Yeah.
so before I ask my last couple of questions, what
Mhm.
did we skip over that we should talk about?
That's a good question. How did you know? I'm sure I've skipped over some important things. There was
What is
something that was kind of burning in me when I was talking about my friend and interaction we had with her mother. And I completely lost my thought, but I was like, oh, I need to tell Chris this. And yeah, it's gone. It's totally gone. I think I don't know. What did I skip over? I think it's important to explain that I don't have it all figured out yet. And I still have moments where I'm like, I can't believe I'm doing this, and I did experience from when I met Helen until maybe about this time last year, I had intense self doubt. And it wasn't even until like even the last year that I'm confident. I'm more confident. I'm almost completely confident. Like when I know I have a reading coming, before it was just like I felt this intense pressure to like kind of like prepare myself for it. But now I do some protocol spiritually, but other than that, I don't sweat it because I know it's going to happen. I know I'm going to open myself and I know that things are going to come through.
What happens when nothing comes through or when nothing would come through? How would you work through that?
That's a good question. That really hasn't directly happened, but I do have spirits pump the brakes. And I think this has happened when I've done you too, where they'll step back and be like, oh, you know what? No, never mind. Something did happen. I'll tell you in a minute. But one time I was like, and I talked to my mentor because I was like, what? Because the intention that we went into the reading for did not happen like as my expectations thought, and that's what happened. But something happened. But where was that? You know what? I lost my train of thought. What was I talking about just before? I'm sorry.
The question was, what do you do when you
Oh,
receive nothing?
well, when spirit pumps the brakes, it's because the client needs to talk. I've learned that. And so I'll ask the client, I'll put the ball in the client's court because the client usually knows where they want to go. And remember, I'm not in control. I'm just open. I'm a straw, a big beam of light, so to speak. So, I'm the tube, I'm the plumbing here, connecting the client and her source, right? So, yeah, like it happens where somebody shuts up and then the other person has to speak because it's a conversation, it's a collaboration, right? So I have had people ask questions where they're like, sorry, we're not answering that. It happens. And I'm like, they're not answering. And it could be a multitude of reasons. One is, and I'll kind of explain why, but I'm quite confident and I don't feel bad when it happens because I know that it's intended to happen like that. And usually it's because if you're curious, usually when you ask a question and you get like a really vague response or even just a like they'll say but it's usually because you have to there's something learning like you have to learn in that situation or experience, or answering that question will like disrupt the continuity of what is in motion already and will like completely stop the development of the person in my experience. Yeah.
Yes. And there's also something, I think, to people finding their own answers. Right.
Exactly.
And so there might be a level of stuckness, but then as someone describes their stuckness, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, they got the lesson or they got this. But you said that you had a very specific example in,
Yes.
okay.
I had a client who lost both of her parents within a year, in the last year or two, like very, very recent. And she no longer lives in the same country as these parents. She's from a country in Europe and she's living here in California. And so she's been completely distraught because this, I mean, they were both like sudden deaths and both of them were very close together. And she's just like, oh my God, now I don't have parents. And so she asked me if I went in with, like, if I could just go in and talk to them and call them. And as soon as she asked me if that's something that I would do, I could do. I'd never really done that before. I just have things pop through because I usually do coaching and I've never done like direct mediumship like that. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, I've done it. So let's do it, you know? And she's a paid client too. And I've had her before. But as soon as she asked me, I could feel her parents in my mind. Like I could just feel them. And I was like, oh, your parents, they say we'll definitely be there. I'm like, oh, great. So it's gonna, in my mind, it was gonna be like Tyler Henry, or like Long Island Medium with the big bouffant hair. It's just like all the messages are gonna come through, but that ain't my style. And I learned that really quickly because we started the reading and they both were there very clearly. And I'm like, yeah. And I described them, I could see them. And then they took these two chairs that were the same colors of chairs that they used in life, which was another kind of confirmation, which at this point, I don't really need confirmation, but it was just good to know that we're going in the right direction because it was a little bit different than usual. And our parents sat down in front of me and I looked at them and they looked at me and I looked back at them and I'm like, so, and they didn't say anything. They're just looking at me. And I was like, okay, I thought we were going to have a experience like they have on TV, but they were just present. And I'm like, this was maybe 2 months ago, 3 months ago. It wasn't very long ago. And I was just like, okay, well, your parents are here. Do you have any questions for them? And she's like, not really. I'm like, well, they're here. And I'm like, let me ask if they have anything to say directly. And I'm like, do you guys have anything to say? And they're like, not really. We just love her. I'm like, okay. They say they love you. But then I realized after that what happened. And we went, the struggle she was having was not because she lost her parents, it's because she was so far away when they passed away and that she feels like she didn't honor them properly. And so that's what the reading was really about, was like, how do you, we explored how she can fill this hole. And it was what she needed. And I was uncomfortable. Like, I mean, I did what I had to do. And then I ended the reading and she seemed very satisfied. I'm like, I don't know if should apologize that her parents didn't say anything. And they were just like sitting there watching the whole thing happen, like just like, hey, like just a little audience. It was very cute, but it wasn't cute because I was like, this lady paid to talk to you guys. Can you please talk? But I did ask my mentor, and my mentor tapped into information about the reading. She was like, oh, no. The reading was perfect. And it was what she needed. It wasn't what she wanted, but it was what she needed. Right. And she seemed satisfied. And I'm like, yeah, I know she's satisfied, but I just promised something that I felt like I promised, and it just didn't happen the way I thought it was going to. Anyway.
That's an important distinction. Right, and getting what they need, or getting what we need when we're on the receiving end of these, and then trusting that that's enough. And it's hard, particularly if you have a little bit of imposter syndrome, or we're new to any one new way of doing things, we're trying things out. But invariably, and it sounds like your experience is like that person gets what they need in that particular moment in time, and you just learn how to trust it. Mm-hmm. So I have two questions for you before we go. And we like to keep these around an hour. The first is around your own self practice. So, one, this is like a two-part question. I mean, one, do you find it easier, more challenging, or same when you're doing your own self work, right? Do you make time to do your own self work, or do you um, take that externally and use working with other people as a way of doing that? Um, yeah, and I want to know if that comes easy to you or what that's like, and how's it different from your experience in working with a paid client?
Before I answer that question, I just want to say one sentence about imposter syndrome. I had it bad for years, and it wasn't until about a year ago where I was like, I'm done with this. I'm not going to worry anymore.
Mm,
I'm either doing it or I'm not, like I'm not going to plague myself anymore. With that
mhm.
being said, self-work, I've noticed that people in our field, Chris, they have problems when they want to go in their own Akashic records, or they talk to their own people who have passed on. I've never had that problem, but it's different for me. It's very different. Like the reading that I do for other people, it's very service based, and yeah, there is some satisfaction out of that, but it's totally different than doing anything for myself. I have a multitude of, let's say, spirit session work that I do for myself. I mean, it's all across the board. Sometimes I just sit open and I get a download and I have no idea what's going on. I don't have any thoughts. I'm just open and I know something's happening. I don't have any communication, anything. I did that when I was really opening up, and I used to sit in meditations when I was really in the heat, in the throes of like development. I used to sit on Saturday mornings. It was my spiritual time, and wake up really early, set the stage, and I would be in a meditation 4, 5, and my record is about 6 hours. Now, you do go up and you do go to the bathroom, but you come back and you're still in it when you go to the bathroom. It's not like you stop it and you go. But I mean, and those were like a kaleidoscope of a lot of different things, a lot of downloading happening, but a lot of communication too. And a lot of when I let my mind go, but it's not really my mind. It's like, and I still do this in the morning naturally when I wake up. I'm very open and I get my best ideas when I'm still in bed because I I don't know. I'm just always open now. My mentor made a comment about that. She was like, "I'm always open, and I can tell you're also someone that's always open." So now, because I've done a lot of spiritual work and a lot of meditation and a lot of work in my own Akashic records and with my guides and things like that, I've almost become the perfect straddler of the two. I don't really need to sit down and be quiet. They're with me all the time and I can feel them, and it's always a conversation. It's always happening. Even when I was coming home, I was in contact, and it's just such a part of my life now that just the two bubbles just started to merge, and it doesn't bother me, and it really helps me in my life. It really helps me make decisions because uh, my decisions are not my own. I've got a team. I mean, how wonderful is that? And that's what I help other people do, is meet their team when they don't do that themselves, or help them meet their team, help them have more communication to know you're not really alone. And there are some plans already kind of set forth for you, but there's also a lot of creativity and a lot of exploration to be done to know yourself and to understand where you want to go in life, and just to really improve your human experience. So I don't know if that answers your question.
It does. It's a great segue into my last one.
Okay.
So, and which is, and we've done meditation together. You have your own meditation group. There's been Reiki. It's like anything that you could possibly do to help people uncover and connect with their team or to experience their team and that they're not alone. Who's who do you love working with? Like, what's your ideal client?
My ideal client is someone who wants more for themselves and who wants to learn about yourself. You don't necessarily have to want to be psychic or intuitive or explore your gifts, but really, I feel like that's the way forward for a lot of people, because we've been, up until recently with the coronavirus, which is a huge break in society, a global on a global scale, people lost the plot with spirituality. And I'm not talking about religion. I'm talking about connecting with yourself. I'm talking about feeling whole. I'm talking about caring for yourself, understanding yourself, not just always reacting to life. There's more to it than that. So, my ideal client is someone who wants to learn about yourself.
Amazing.
And it goes from there. And I will say that if you are having questions about being intuitive, you feel you are being called to explore that part of yourself, like I was once, and Chris, you as well. You're teaching Akashic Records, correct?
Yeah.
Yep, you are. Say yes, because I know it's there. I'm also teaching Akashic Records. Right
Some of
now,
it,
we're both doing it privately. We don't have any
right.
formal courses. I'm not sure if you have any in the works.
Yeah. Well,
I will in the future, like formal courses where you can take it with others. I'm doing it private 101 now. So I mean, and you obviously you're doing it private as well, whether or not you want to say yes or no, you are.
I am. Yes.
Yes, you are doing it privately one on
Oh,
one.
right.
So right now it's very customized where you're the only person in the class. So maybe now's the time you need to hit up one of us to get some instruction and some guidance with and learn some, like, how to access your Akashic records, because again, that's the gateway drug. And I feel like a lot of people do get drawn to Akashic records where you just use it for yourself,
Yeah.
and
It
that's
really
it.
is finding your own answers, right? And that seems to be like
Yes.
my thing. Yes.
Yes. So I think now's the time. If you're listening to this and you're like, oh, I wonder Akashic Records, listen, you don't have to be psychic to learn Akashic Records.
You
But
have to believe in it.
honestly, you don't even
Right.
have to believe in it. Yep. Uh, Chris, you do a lot of fly high journeys with people. Also, I do at the moment. I do past life regressions, but Chris, I think you probably could do a past life regression. Have you been doing them lately with other people?
Yes.
I knew it. Chris can also do them. And I'm pretty sure, have you done any like taken anybody out of like into astral territory? Because I know that's in the book, in the papers for you.
Um, yes, but not in that. That usually involves some special
Oh,
work
got it. Got it. Okay.
because I
Yep.
like to play. I like to travel with.
Yes, 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 yes. Got it. Okay. But anyway, my point is we're both doing journeys of self exploration of some sort. We're both teaching. We are both also coaching, where you're still going to be able to communicate and we can help you get the guidance and the direction and the answers that you need in order to pursue big projects or whatever. So, yeah.
It's cool. Like one of my clients slash friends, I just adore her. She's wonderful, and she gives me a really safe space to play.
Mhm.
I had it came up when we were doing some work together a few months ago. I was like, I think I'm supposed to teach you how to do this. Are you down? And she's like, yeah. I was like, all right, fuck it. Let's just do that now instead. And like, so she went into my, and I think I shared the story with you, and I went into hers and she went into mine, and she was experiencing what I had experienced when I was doing some astral travel earlier that morning. And I was like, okay, like she's good. So now we can like go into the advanced class. And she booked 5 paid sessions for clients of hers doing that just the other day. And I was like, wow, like how amazing is that? Like when you just think through, like we'll go to like Linda and then via Helen and then other people, and how one person truly can impact 500,000 right through 5 people. And I was like, yes, I just want to keep lighting people up. And you do a wonderful job of that. So thank you for sharing yourself over this last hour. I enjoyed.
Aw. Well, in our next episode, it's your turn.
Or not.
Or we'll see.
Okay. Yeah, we'll just go when the spirit moves us.
Yes, definitely. Well, thank you, Chris, for giving me an opportunity, because I know that today when we were deciding what we're going to talk about, it just kept like pushing towards this topic. Not me per se, but my people. So I thank them, and I thank you, because I kind of get what has happened here.
Yes.
Should I
Good.
say it?
Sure.
This is
Say
kind of this was a little bit of a coming out and fully owning it episode.
Yes.
You get what I'm talking about, right? It was like, it's like 100% all in, whereas before it was like 98% maybe, and 99, you know, internet, and it's like, oh yeah, well, this is who I am.
We'll
So
go back and watch this smile that you just had at whatever minute it is. Again, there's lots of juice here for you to drink.
well, thank you. And it's also very uplifting to kind of review my own journey and see how far I've come. You know, it really does help me. So thank you for the opportunity, Chris.
It's so the fun little story here is that I was feeling great all day, and then half an hour before doing the podcast, I felt like shit. Like, that's so weird. Like, my stomach was upset. I was flush. I mean, I was like, I don't know what's going on. And when I was going to the records, and I kept saying her, Christina, I was like, what is going on? Like, things were just taking over. And this is what happens when we just allow and let the spirit work through us, Christina. It was
I
meant to be,
know.
and I feel amazing. So I'm glad we
I
did this.
well, I'm glad I could cure you through the relief of going in the direction that was definitely not in our control. So
That's
thank
our
you.
relationship, baby.
All right, see you, Chris.
Bye.